Welcome everyone. We just finished one of the IFST Food Safety Interest Groups meetings. Had Chris Holland here, marvellous presentation on BRC and the implications of version 7. Chris, that went down really well. The standard's been out there now for about a year. What have you learnt in the last year with the new standard?
A number of things. I think the standard was brought forward to address a number of issues that had changed over the years since the last version 6. Namely, lots of problems and withdrawals because of poor labelling, mislabelling, allergens, and also the vulnerability. We've had the horse thing, we've had the Sudan thing, and I think the traceability side, together with vulnerability in food, has been addressed by the new standard.
I've seen when the standard first came in that people were finding their way on vulnerability. Do you think now people are more confident? Do you see people focusing on that more in the future?
Yes, I mean there are three little bits in the standard that vulnerability is addressed, three little things that you need to look at, but the main one is the vulnerability assessment. I think many people thought that the overarching thing of TASSUP and VASSUP, which have become slop-chip phrases of the moment, was the way to go. But actually the standard isn't quite that comprehensive. It merely asks for a vulnerability assessment of your raw materials. Are they likely to be open to fraud? Can you stop it?
That's an interesting question, because the standard says raw materials. Does that include packaging?
An interpretation of the standard is that raw materials are raw materials. The word packaging isn't actually mentioned in the clause, and I've consulted a couple of people about that particular point, and I'm told that if packaging isn't included, it won't be a non-conformance.
Interesting. And I see for the future there's add-ons being brought to the standard. One of those is food safety culture, which seems to be very high on the food safety agenda. What's your view on food safety culture, and how can you put that into the standard? How are you going to measure it?
The measurement side is dealt with in the add-on section, but the overarching thing of food safety culture is really what the BRC standards are meant to address in terms of not just paying lip service to the standard and doing all the bits the standard says, but imbuing that culture from the standard into your factory. So you're addressing, in a sense, what the standard is about, and you're absorbing the culture and making the whole factory making food which is safe, legal, of the right quality, because it's part of what you do. It's not just making the food, it's imbued with the passion of making the right food. And in that way, if you embrace the whole standard for what it is, you will get that food safety culture, and the whole company will be able to use the standard as a good management tool.
Do you think that the standard is getting more recognition? One of the things that frustrates some people, isn't it? It's very comprehensive, it's a very thorough audit, and it's supposed to give confidence to outside bodies, whether that is a part of a due diligence defence or to a retail customer. But we don't seem to be seeing a reduction in audits by other people, which is one of the aims, I think, of the standard, was to reduce that burden. In your opinion, is it going the right way? Are we seeing fewer extra audits?
The original concept of the BRC was to do away with the technical manager being a tour guide and to get him back to his job, so that you just had one audit to cover everything. And for a little while that was indeed the case. But then retailers move on, the food industry moves on. There are lots more things that need to be done to assure the safety, quality and legality of the food. The standard addresses a lot of those, but because the industry has moved on, we've all become that much more professional. The standard is almost regarded now as an entry level if you want to make food for a large sector of the population, be it national or international. I think the standard is addressing that in a number of ways by listening to the retailers and putting things in, but inevitably retailers are individual bodies. They want their own little bits in, and a number of them are taking the BRC standard and adding their own particular aspects that they feel important to their business.
We've seen a larger uptake of the unannounced audits, which probably gives more confidence to retailers and to other parties. What's your view on unannounced audits?
As an ex-technical manager, I think it's an absolute nightmare. But looking at it from outside, businesses generally need to be more accountable. And I think that the phrase that's used a lot these days is audit ready, because you have a number of audits. And I think the unannounced audit makes you aware you haven't just got to be good on the day, you've got to be good all the time. And I think it's a useful tool, and it gives consumers, when they understand it, a lot more confidence in the safety of the product. Going back to basics in terms of food hygiene and safety, we can't assure, just by buying food, that it's safe. We have to trust the manufacturers. And the more tools that we have at our disposal, such as the unannounced audit, the more we'll be able to trust the manufacturer.
And in your experience, Chris, if you compare what you see on an unannounced audit and an announced audit, do you see a difference in standards? Do you notice something that's going on differently?
Yes, there is a slight difference, but having done unannounced for a number of years, the difference over the years is actually less now, because more people are being drawn into the unannounced audits because of different customers demanding this. And as well as that, there is a feeling among the more responsible manufacturers that even though we're not unannounced, we've really got to keep the same standard up all the year round, because it's so much easier to do that rather than have a big clean-up and document check a couple of days before the next audit.
That's interesting, Chris. And then if you look to the last year and you see the non-conformances, if we did like a top 10, top of the pops, what are the big non-conformances that you're picking up? What's BRC picking up? Is it still the same old things, or is there new things on that top 10 list?
My feeling is it's a mixture. There are certain little nuances in the standard that a lot of people miss. Some simple phrases that you need to read the standard thoroughly to pick up. There are the new stuff that inevitably, in the first round of audits, people misinterpret slightly. They don't quite understand, haven't quite hit what the standard wants. But always surprisingly, there are still the old chestnuts, such as holes in the bottom of doors and fabric contentions, hot water not at sinks, things like that.
And for the future, Chris, it's a hard job being an auditor. We can see that you have unsocial hours, you need a lot of expertise to do the job. Do you think there's enough new blood coming into the audit teams doing BRC? So do you think we're going to have those auditors in the future? A lot of experienced people seem to be leaving the business.
It is becoming more difficult to be an auditor in terms of the qualifications and the knowledge and expertise you have. So from that point of view, there's less of a pool to draw from. There are young people coming on, but inevitably you have to have a certain amount of experience to do audit. My feeling among my compatriots is that there are less of us than there was before. I'm a self-employed, I'm a subcontractor. I'm never out of work. I can audit every day of the week, which to me indicates, and so do a number of other subcontractors, it indicates that there aren't enough people to go around. The big CVs are not getting the people into the trade. Because as you say, it's getting more and more difficult to become an auditor. And it's not, you know, you look at it sometimes, you think it's really a thankless task. We've got to get up early, go to bed late, we're travelling a lot. And the reports, you've got a long report to write.
Yeah, it must take you a few hours just to write the report.
Indeed. The BRC like to see in their standard and a lot of others giving value for money in terms of you paid a lot of money, we've done the audit, here's a nice report for you to put on file. In reality, the bits of the report that are really only applicable are the non-conformances and a little bit of an outline of the factory.
You were certainly value for money today, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It's much appreciated by the people that turned up. I think it's shown by the number of questions and the enthusiastic reception that you got. So thank you very much. Chris Holland, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.